You don't struggle because you lack focus. You struggle because you have too much of it, just not in one place. You start things deeply, then something else pulls you in, not because you're bored, but because your mind sees connections everywhere. And quietly you wonder, why can't I just choose one thing and stick to it? But what if that question itself is the wrong one? You've probably heard it before. You need to specialize, pick a lane, finish one thing. So you try. You force yourself to narrow down, to ignore interests that keep resurfacing, to quiet the part of you that keeps asking new questions. But something feels off. When you commit to only one identity, your energy drops, your curiosity shrinks, your thinking becomes flat. You start doubting yourself. Maybe you're inconsistent, maybe you're undisciplined, maybe something is wrong with how your brain works. This shows up everywhere. In careers where you feel overqualified and underfit at the same time. In relationships where you feel deeply but resist being defined by one role. In your self-talk, where excitement is followed by guilt. Psychologically, this often gets mislabeled as distraction, but it's closer to a pattern of cognitive breadth, a mind that naturally scans wide before going deep. And here's the unsettling part. Modern culture often treats that as a flaw. But the brain didn't evolve in spreadsheets and job titles. It evolved for adaptation, and adaptation doesn't move in straight lines. Let's shift the frame. What if your many interests aren't a failure of focus, but evidence of a different cognitive design? In psychology, traits like openness to experience, associative thinking, and divergent attention are linked to minds that explore across domains. These brains don't optimize for repetition, they optimize for pattern recognition. Instead of asking, how do I commit to one thing forever? The better question is, what kind of future actually needs this kind of mind? Because historically, generalist minds thrive during transitions, not stable eras. And we are not in a stable era. Here's what's happening under the surface. Your brain likely has a highly sensitive novelty detection system. That's driven by dopamine, but not the shallow kind, not dopamine from quick rewards, but dopamine from meaningful insight. When you learn something new, your brain doesn't just store facts, it looks for links. This is called associative processing. Think of your mind less like a tunnel and more like a neural web. Each interest is a node. The value isn't in any single node, it's in the connections between them. Now, imagine forcing that web into a single straight line. That's when frustration appears. Not because you lack discipline, but because the structure doesn't match the system. Here's the mental model. Specialist minds are like ladders. They climb one vertical path. Your mind is more like a mountain range. It moves up, across, then up again. That shape has a name, the M-shaped path. But why hasn't that been explained to you before? This isn't about embracing chaos. It's about working with your brain instead of against it. Here's a framework designed specifically for multi-interest minds. 1. Replace one identity with core theme. What to do? Stop asking, what do I do? Start asking, what problem do I keep returning to? Why it works? The brain organizes meaning around themes, not titles. When you anchor to a theme, you reduce cognitive dissonance. Example, you might move between psychology, design, writing, and strategy, but the theme is understanding human behavior. The brain relaxes when it sees coherence. 2. Stack interests sequentially, not simultaneously. What to do? Pursue interests in seasons, not all at once. Why it works? Working memory overload triggers stress. Attentional limits respect attentional limits without suppressing curiosity. Example, 3 months of deep learning, then a shift without guilt. You're not quitting, you're layering. 3. Track skills, not projects. What to do? Measure growth by transferable skills gained. Why it works? The brain stores competence more stably than outcomes. This builds identity continuity. Example, communication, synthesis, problem framing. These survive every pivot. 4. Build integration time into your week. What to do? Schedule unstructured thinking time. Why it works? The default mode network activates integration. This is where cross-domain insight forms. Example, long walks, quiet evenings, no input, only connection. This is where your mind does its real work. 5. Redefine mastery. What to do? Stop chasing linear expertise. Aim for contextual depth. Why it works? Your brain retains motivation when learning feels expansive, not confining. Example, you don't need to be the best in one box. You need to see across boxes. That's where your value compounds. 6. Integration. So here's the model to remember. You are not behind, you are not scattered, you are M-shaped. You go deep, then wide, then deeper again. Each rise builds on the last. The mistake was assuming progress had to look like a straight line. But your brain doesn't grow that way. It grows through contrast, through cross-pollination, through cycles of expansion and refinement. Once you stop fighting that rhythm, something shifts. Clarity replaces guilt. Direction replaces pressure. Not because you simplified yourself, but because you finally understood your shape. 7. Quiet, empowering close. You don't need fewer interests. You need a future that can use them. And that future isn't hypothetical. It's already unfolding. The world doesn't just need specialists anymore. It needs people who can connect what others keep separate. So maybe the question was never, what's wrong with me? Maybe it was always, what am I preparing for? And maybe you're right on time.